It's officially mock draft season. And on today's Jags Now, we are going to be bringing you my very first Jacksonville Jaguars 3-round mock draft. We won't go full 7 rounds today, but figured, mock draft season, I'd dip my toe into, what some potential draft targets could be for the Jaguars this offseason. Welcome into Jags Now. I am your host, Cullen Brown. And listen, guys, we are growing here at Jags Now, and I want to give you guys some reasons why you should hit that subscribe button. We bring you daily news, rumors, and analysis all year long surrounding the Jacksonville Jaguars, whether it's a free agency move they make, whether it's a game they play, whatever the case may be. Trades, free agency, the draft. We'll be covering it here on Jags Now, and we want to hear from you. This is a dual communication thing that we've got going on here at Jags Now. I try to respond to as many, if not all, the comments that get down here at Jags Now. I want to hear from you. Give me your thoughts whenever I put out a video. We're currently at just over 1,000 subs. Again, shout out to you guys for being some of the best fans here on YouTube. And the more subscribers we get, the more videos we're willing to make, whether it's at home, as you guys saw earlier in the week, or here in studio, now that we're back here in Dallas. So without any further ado, let's kind of, set the scene, if you will, in terms of the Jacksonville Jaguars and what they could potentially need this offseason. I think defensive tackle, no matter what they do in terms of restructures, contract extensions, regardless, defensive tackle is the number one need for this team. Following that linebacker, you're probably going to lose Devin Lloyd. We'll see if they're able to kind of, maneuver the cap, maybe add some void years. We'll see what even his market looks like, but I think he probably prices himself out of Jacksonville. Therefore, linebacker becomes a need. Cornerback, especially with the uncertainty of whether or not you're going to bring back a Buster Brown. You really only have one outside corner in Travis Hunter signed to the active roster for 2026, so cornerback's a need. And then running back, edge, I think are more kind of secondary, almost even tertiary needs for Jacksonville, but those are my top 5 needs. Let me know down in the comments below if you agree. But if you're unfamiliar or if you're, for whatever reason, weren't conscious during the last draft here back in 2025, the Jaguars did trade their first-round pick in this upcoming draft in 2026 in a trade that landed them Travis Hunter. So we've got 4 day 2 picks for the Jacksonville Jaguars, pick 56, pick 81, pick 88, and pick 100. Note, comp picks have not been factored in to this formula yet, so just kind of, there still could be some draft picks that come Jacksonville's way, but as we currently sit here at January 29th, these are the 4 day 2 picks that we're going to be exploring on this mock draft episode here on Jags Now. Now, when I fired up the PFF mock simulator, these were the 5 picks that went ahead of the Jaguars pick at number 56. LT Overton, the edge out of Alabama, going to the Carolina Panthers. Then we had back-to-back Indiana Hoosiers going to the Packers and the Steelers with D'Angelo Pons and Omar Cooper Jr. Eli Stowers, the very talented tight end out of Vandy, and then Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, who has been really a darling in terms of, as a draft prospect, rising up draft boards, a kid from Toledo. They've had some talent come out of there recently with guys like Quinion Mitchell, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. He's a heat-seeking missile. I know PFF's Trevor Sikkema has also been really high on Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, and listen, I'm intrigued in the player as well. I think he's a true strong safety at the next level. Somebody that, I don't think Jacksonville will necessarily target unless they view safety as some position that they truly, really need to invest in, but a talented player nonetheless. But that brings us to the first pick in this mock draft. At the 56th pick in the second round, the first player that I select for this Jacksonville Jaguars mock draft is Lee Hunter, the defensive tackle out of Texas Tech. I mean, this guy's an absolute stud. He's been one of my favorite draft prospects that I've gotten to know so far during this kind of process, and for good reason, right? I mean, he has been productive. Originally started out as a recruit to the Auburn Tigers under Gus Malzahn, transferred to UCF, had 3 really productive years for the Golden Knights, and then obviously went to Texas Tech, Red Raiders, and had his best year. He's going to be an older prospect. He's 24 years old. He will be 24 years old as a rookie. Does have inconsistent pad level when he's, getting double teamed, and his pass rush arsenal could need some work. But I can't get enough of this dude, man. He has violent hands, good first step, good lateral quickness, especially for a guy his size at 320 plus pounds. This guy can move, especially when he gets in the backfield. Second in the country in run stop rate at 11.9%. And at a need for Jacksonville at the defensive tackle spot, Lee Hunter is my favorite round 2 target for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And to be honest, I'm sitting here, we're recording this on the 29th of January. He may not be a second round target anymore because Daniel Jeremiah, who recently put out his first mock draft, had him as the number 22 pick overall, going to the LA Chargers in his first mock draft. And he's a fan, saying he has outstanding size, quickness, and ability to disrupt. And I couldn't agree more. To me, Lee Hunter is somebody that, if nothing else in the NFL, he will be a productive run-stopping defensive tackle that will be key in a good team's rotation for years to come. And when you're thinking about the defensive tackles for Jacksonville, obviously you have Eric Armstead, who was still productive last season for Jacksonville. He's 32 years old. Devon Hamilton, really good run stuffer in his own right. He's turning 28. He's starting to get up there in age. Austin Johnson, Matt Dickerson, these guys are more rotational edges at this point. If you're trying to fix the number one issue, I think, in my opinion, for the Jacksonville Jaguars last season, which was getting after the quarterback, you have to do it from not only the exterior, where you have Josh Hines-Allen, you have Trayvon Walker, but also the fact that you're going to need pressure from the interior as well. And I think if Hunter were to develop some more pass rush moves, I mean, he has the bull rush, he has the two-hand swipe, but outside of that, his pass rush repertoire is limited. That being said, I think he has all the potential in the world to be one of the better defensive tackles in the entire NFL. I'm a huge fan. I think if he somehow were to fall to 56, because his draft stock is rising as we currently speak, I think Jacksonville should pounce on the opportunity to take the man out of Texas Tech. Now, I want to hear from you guys. Let me know down in the comments section. Would you draft Lee Hunter at the number 56 overall pick in the 2026 NFL Draft? Again, there might be a chance that he may not be there, but in my opinion, he would address a major need for Jacksonville, and I think he's one hell of a player that could return some first-round value in the second round if he were selected by Jacksonville. All right, getting into the second pick in the third round with pick number 81, I decided to address another need for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I went the cornerback route. I selected Julian Neal out of Arkansas. The Razorback was really talented, former Fresno State Bulldog, had 55 tackles, 12 pass breakups, 2 interceptions. He just had a nose for football. Really physical corner, somebody that I think is going to be somebody that really thrives in a zone-heavy scheme, such as what Jacksonville ran last year with Anthony Campanelli. You see the stats on screen, only allowed a 56.3% completion percentage when targeted, 12 pass breakups, 2 interceptions like we previously mentioned, only an 82 quarterback rating. And listen, he's not without his flaws, right? But I think when you're sitting there looking at the Jacksonville Jaguars like cornerback room, you're going to need somebody like a Julian Neal here who, again, he's built like an NFL boundary cornerback, 6'2", about 200 pounds. He can play on the outside. He's physical at the catch point, which I think is really important in today's NFL. And he's not afraid to support and run defense. Like you talk about all these guys in corners setting the edge. Like this was a big part of why Jacksonville was able to have a top run defense in the NFL last season, was because their corners were able to support and run defense. So I think Neal would only add to that. Again, not a perfect prospect, lacks elite long speed. I think he can get in trouble if he gets into a foot race, a track meet with a speedier, shiftier receiver. Can peak in the backfield too early. If he's sitting there and, wants to get aggressive trying to make a play, he can, get burned on a double move. So that's something that he has to continue to work on. And especially in his press technique, I don't think is always the greatest. I think it's something that, he will need to work on if he wants to succeed as a cornerback at the next level. But I think Neal will, help this Jaguars team that, as we previously mentioned, if you're looking at the cornerbacks for Jacksonville next year, you obviously have Travis Hunter, who I would expect to have majority of his playtime be at that cornerback spot. That's going to be one of your outside corners, right? You have Jordan Lewis, who's going to be your starting nickel, who you signed this past offseason. He was hurt, for a good portion of this past year. He'll be back at nickel. Jarian Jones is more of a nickel. He'll contribute. Christian Braswell's a restricted free agent. He's also kind of a nickel, kind of tweener-ish kind of corner. You need more competition and depth at that outside cornerback spot. And if you don't bring back Buster Brown, who we're going to talk about probably in a future video, Monteric Brown was a really key component of this team last year. Why don't you potentially replace one Arkansas Razorback with another in Julian Neal? I think that could be the move if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars. Moving on to round 3, pick number 88. And I decided to go a route that, again, as we currently sit here today, we don't know what the Jaguars are going to do with Travis Etienne. I would imagine that they would move off, though, given the just kind of other needs that they have on the roster, the fact that they have a Bashal Tootin, the fact that they have a LaQuint Allen. But I went ahead and selected Emmett Johnson, the running back out of Nebraska, who his first 2 years in Nebraska weren't the most productive, but this past season, when they kind of gave him the keys to the offense, really exploded. 251 carries, 1,400 yards on the ground, 5.8 yards per carry, 15 total touchdowns. You see his receiving numbers at the bottom of the screen. He is a true weapon out of the backfield. He has excellent vision and patience, has great agility, a true pass-catching threat. The cons of him, though, not great in pass pro, not the fastest running back, and his power at the attack point is average. He is a guy that sits there. His best usage is getting him the ball, letting the blocks develop, him, deciding, all right, one cut, let me get upfield. He's not going to break any long, 70, 80-yard runs, but he's somebody that if you have a Bashal Tutin, who is the definition of a home run hitter, I think Emmett Johnson could be somebody that really complements this offense really well. And we know how much Liam Cohen values running backs. It's been something that during his entire tenure as a offensive coordinator in the NFL / as a head coach with the Jaguars, he's really valued, whether it was with Bucky Irving or whether it was Travis Etienne this past season. And again, you only make this move on a day 2 pick if you let Travis Etienne walk. I think that Etienne more than likely will price himself out of Jacksonville. Now, he said in his kind of end-of-season press conference that, he would like to be back in Jacksonville, but kind of gave the impression that this is a business. Like, it could happen, right? Like, you could, see Etienne in a different uniform next season. And I think that with the value that Liam Cohen has in the running backs in this offense, Emmett Johnson would be a nice complement to a Bashal Tutin, to a LaQuint Allen. And that's the reason I went with this pick in the 3rd round at pick number 88. So getting into our final pick here of the 3rd round, I decided that to address another need for the Jaguars, and this is one of my favorite draft prospects in the entire draft class for 2026. I went with Lee Hunter, ironically, his former teammate in Malachi Lawrence, the edge out of UCF. Lawrence, simply put, is a dog, and is somebody that, ironically, I think, if nothing else, will get after the passer. Had 7 sacks this past season on 40 pressures. If you're Jacksonville, right, and you're bottom 7, I think you're bottom 8 in sack production last year, you need guys, not just Josh Hines-Allen, not just Trayvon Walker. You need depth at, the trenches in terms of adding a guy like Lee Hunter who could still help you in run support. I think we'll add a bonus in terms of pass rush ability. But then also off the edge, who are your guys in sub packages that could also potentially be, a starter one day in the NFL? I think Malachi Lawrence has that potential. He is a guy that has great size and frame. He's listed at 6'4", 247 pounds, 33.5-inch arms, although he was rumored to have close to 35-inch arms at the Shrine Bowl, but those were his official measurements. He's explosive, has a dynamic first step, has many different pass rush moves that he can go to and counter. He has really good speed to power. Not the greatest in run defense, and block shedding does need to improve. He can play a little bit out of control, but I'd rather have that from an edge. That's somebody that you have to rein in versus somebody that you have to, build the fire out of. And I think Malachi Lawrence immediately, if nothing else, the moment he steps on an NFL field, will be able to get after the quarterback, and that's value. That is value in 2026 and beyond. And just kind of reiterating it, if you hadn't guessed already, he's one of my draft crushes for 2026. I think he's a guy, he's ranked 155th on PFF's big board as we're sitting here filming today. That's, day 3 grade, roughly round 4, round 5, whatever that is. I think he's not only a day 2 guy, but I think he's somebody that could eventually become a really solid starter for an NFL team someday. And if you add that pass rushing element, where, again, you have Josh Hines-Allen, we'll see what they do with Trayvon Walker. I'd imagine he'd be a potential contract extension guy. Maybe they let him play it out for one more season, the former number 1 overall pick, obviously. But bottom line, if you're the Jaguars, you have to be able to generate more pressure, whether it's from the interior or whether it's from the edges. And I think if you drafted a Lee Hunter and if you drafted a Malachi Lawrence, you will have better numbers than what you did last season. I think Malachi Lawrence is going to be a factor in the NFL, but you guys let me know what you think of the pick, and let me know what you think of my entire Jaguars mock draft. It's my first one here on the channel. Get your red pin now. Grade me A, B, C, D, or F. Let me know down in the comments section what you think of my Jaguars mock draft. And as always, Jags fans, Duval. We'll see you.